对许多人，地球科学家来讲，北极冰融代表全球的暖化，一个悲伤的故事。但是对这些权力大国来讲，北极冰融代表的是什么？代表的是另一场极地的争夺战。所以我们所看到的格陵兰、买下格陵兰，或是抢夺格陵兰，或是占领格陵兰，或者是最后签订协定，等于实质的占有格陵兰，不管是哪一个形式，都不只是川普的故事。迅速融化的北极冰层早就引发了大国之间的资源争夺战。我们待会儿为大家特别播出 CBS 所制作的一个纪录片，在这个纪录片里头，你可以看到之前呢，俄罗斯在冷战时期有一些基地，然后最近他都重启了这些基地，他在北极50个军事基地，是全世界数量第一。而美国也有在这个地方的冰上基地，不只是现在，格陵兰不是美国的第一步，美国早就悄悄在这里的冰上建立了好几个基地。当然他们和战斗民族呢对于基地的熟悉度不一样，所以 CBS 特别制作了这些美军如何在极地的风雪里头克难的生活，就是为了和俄罗斯势力一较高下。
In 2017, a Russian oil tanker traveled across the Arctic without needing an icebreaker. That's a huge deal. The journey connected Asia to Europe in just 19 days, far shorter than the 48 days it normally takes for ships to go from China to Europe's largest port in Rotterdam.
欢迎来到北极。冰层的急速融化不仅推升了极端气候的威胁，更点燃了另一个危险——大国的资源争夺。
This is the Arctic region, an area spanning 14.5 million square kilometers, which features in recent headlines mostly due to its melting ice caps. It contains 160 billion barrels of oil and 30% of the planet's undiscovered natural gas. It also contains 40% of the world's palladium, 20% of its diamonds, and 15% of its platinum, among several other rare earth minerals. Russia, which had closed its Soviet-era bases, had exited the peaceful cooperation doctrine and built over 50 military bases to establish deterrence. It is now the largest force in the region, outnumbering other military bases by 3-1, suggesting that Russia will be well prepared by the time the Arctic region melts completely.Expected to happen in 2040.
早早做好准备的当然不止俄罗斯，还有也在北极圈占有一席之地的美国。美国 CBS 电视台的采访团队记录下了2016年美国在北极海上的一次军方调查任务。
We flew as guests of the Navy from Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, 200 miles in the direction of the North Pole, over fractured, thinning ice.to a spot where the ice was still thick enough to support this base camp. It was a small temporary village.
Hi, welcome, everyone. How do you do? Nice to meet you. Welcome.
For 5 weeks, this no man's land of ice was home to an expeditionary team of sailors, scientists, and engineers whose mission was to understand how to survive in maybe the most hostile conditions on Earth.The Navy says those taking part in this exercise are the first humans ever to set foot on this part of the planet.
It's actually beautiful beyond belief, isn't it?
It really is.
Chuck McGuire was one of the first to arrive. He's an engineer with the University of Washington's Applied Physics Lab that was brought in to build this camp from scratch.
So you get off the plane, there's nothing. There's no shelter, there's no indoors.
No.
There was just ice.
Ice everywhere. That's right.
And you say, how am I going to survive?
You pick up a hammer and start building.
They built a makeshift city called Sargo for roughly 60 people, consisting of a command post, tight living quarters, a mess hall stocked with food airlifted in weekly, and some very primitive toilet facilities.
That outhouse is really cold.
Outhouse is awful. Oh my God.
在这个临时搭建的调查基地，连喝水都是问题。
They bring back chunks to melt down into the camp's only drinking water. The ice moves that much every day in unpredictable directions because of the currents underwater and the wind above. The temperature can drop to as low as 50 below, and that can wreak havoc on just about everything. weapons, communication systems, sensors, and people, including these Navy divers who were here to test their latest cold weather gear and their endurance in the frigid water. These robotics engineers are conducting underwater experiments in a temperature-controlled tent. When we were there, Doug Horner and his team were field testing these underwater drones for the first time in the Arctic. The drones are collecting scientific data about the Arctic, where the water gets warmer the deeper you go. They're also getting a picture of what it looks like down below.
My primary emphasis here is the ability to map the under ice. So we have sensors, sonar specifically, which is sound, which is focused upwards. And what we hope to do with continually putting sound upwards is to make a map.
You're mapping the bottom of the ice?
Yes, the underneath portion of the ice.
And why is that important?
I want to be able to navigate relative to that. So this is the idea of being able to navigate an underwater robot accurately without GPS. Because in the ice, you don't have the opportunity to come up to the surface for a GPS fix.
He says these drones could also be used to patrol the waters of the Arctic, looking for enemy subs, for instance, the way drones hover in the sky over a battlefield. The Navy is testing this technology and amassing all of this research to prepare for an expanded presence in the Arctic as the ice continues to melt.
除了科学研究，美国当然也在北极圈内进行军事演习。
When we were there, the Navy was conducting a submarine warfare exercise, something it does in the Arctic every 2 years. When a sub surfaces in the Arctic, they use shovels to carve a visual landmark in the ice that the sub can see. X literally marks the spot. But that X is a moving target because of the drifting ice.
There we go.
Which makes maneuvering a windowless steel cylinder the size of a football field to such a pinpoint location seem impossible. But on this day, the skipper and his crew, punching up through thick ice, nailed it on their first try.
然而，在北极，俄军的存在并不是美国最大的危机。
During our last day at the camp, something dramatic happened. A crack in the ice along the perimeter became a giant lake. New fissures formed right through the heart of the camp, up to the doorstep of the command post. Everything was packed up quickly for an emergency evacuation, a reminder that the most formidable adversary here may not be Russian forces, but the forces of nature.